Hello everyone, our main character today is a man believed to be Fautan Gap Bob Bani Sissoko, from Mali. This handsome man comes from the village of Dabia, west of the capital city of Mali, Bamako. Little is known about Sissoko's childhood, but this intriguing story began in 1995 when Sissoko arrived in Bamako with enough money and significant business acumen in the area. It attracted many people from different countries and ethnicities to come here to establish businesses and make a living. However, Sissoko arrived with a business visa. He headed straight to one of the largest mosques in the city. Sissoko went straight to the main branch and boldly requested to meet the bank manager, Mohammed A.U. At this point, the bank staff were surprised because not everyone could just walk in and demand to see the bank manager immediately. Nevertheless, Sissoko persisted until he got a direct meeting with A.U. Eventually, Sissoko got what he wanted, a meeting with the bank manager. When A.U. asked about the purpose of his visit, Sissoko requested a loan to buy land. Typically, there are certain criteria needed to qualify for a loan, but with a job or steady income, some leniency is given in approving loans. And of course, Sissoko didn't have any, especially not the kind A.U. was referring to. However, Sissoko managed to persuade A.U., convincing him to approve a land purchase loan without requiring any collateral. Then, Sissoko thanked Mohammed and invited him to his apartment for dinner. Initially, Mohammed A.U. was hesitant, but Sissoko persisted in persuading Mohammed to come to his apartment, and accepted the dinner invitation. Sissoko promised Mohammed to show him something special and different from his culture. A spectacle that Mohammed had never seen before, and assured him that he wouldn't regret it. At this point, Mohammed's curiosity was piqued, especially in the 1990s when stories of magic and mysticism were even more mysterious than today, and people were drawn to them and fascinated by them. Eventually, Mohammed agreed to the invitation. And that evening, the bank manager went to Sissoko's apartment as agreed. Sissoko greeted him, and after some initial friendly conversation, Sissoko led Mohammed into a dimly lit room, which seemed like something out of another world, filled with various artifacts. There, Sissoko revealed that he was a sorcerer with the ability to double any amount of money without needing any collateral. Usually, if Mohammed brought a certain amount, Sissoko could double that amount. Next, Mohammed listened intently as Sissoko explained the room's various objects. He seemed captivated by this strange and curious world. To seal the deal, Mohammed called his relatives to bring in 100,000 dirhams, equivalent to about $25,000. When the money arrived, the bank manager handed it over to Sissoko, and both men entered the dimly lit room. In the middle of the room, Sissoko sat with the money in front of him. Meanwhile, the bank manager, standing and observing, suddenly, Sissoko lit an indistinct powder in a bowl, causing smoke and a fragrant aroma to permeate the room. He began to hum strange melodies, swaying from side to side. As the room filled with a sweet scent, electricity flickered in the room, causing everything to fade into darkness. Moments later, a loud noise erupted from a nearby room, and a door burst open. A man rushed out screaming, and a fierce battle ensued. The bank manager was now perplexed and unsure of what to do. But Sissoko laughed and reassured the manager not to worry, explaining that such occurrences were quite normal. However, the manager might not be comfortable with the presence of dark magic or a stranger's villa. Then Sissoko granted a break from the apartment for a while until the doubling process was complete. The manager was very anxious and confused by what he had witnessed, so he listened to Sissoko and waited outside. He heard music and noises coming from inside the apartment, and even saw smoke seeping out from under the door. After a while, the commotion inside the apartment subsided, and then a loud noise ceased, and the door opened. Sissoko stood at the door, inviting the bank manager back into the house. The manager entered and saw the apartment filled with smoke, but the first thing he noticed was the money on the table. Sissoko pointed to the stack of money and told the manager, "This is your money doubled. You gave me 100,000, and now it's 200,000 dirhams." The manager approached the table with astonishment and counted his money, seemingly doubled. The policy of doubling money had indeed been implemented multiple times. At this point, The bank manager, Momet, was completely convinced and impressed by Sissoko's performance. Perhaps it was the manager's desperation that made him trust Sissoko's credibility, despite any initial doubts. Interestingly, doubling money schemes were common scams in the 1990s, especially due to the lack of regulation in certain jurisdictions. Surprisingly, a seasoned bank manager like Momet was now caught up in it. He truly believed that Sissoko was a sorcerer who could double the amount of money. This belief led Momet to start transferring substantial sums of money to Sissoko regularly. Even though Sissoko never doubled the money as promised, Momet continued to facilitate these transactions, all from the bank's funds. Over the period from 1995 to 1998, the bank manager executed 183 money transfers into Sissoko's account. Not only in his bank, but also in many countries around the world, including the US, Switzerland, and France. The total amount of these transfers amounted to $242 million. So why did the bank manager continue to carry out these transactions, even though Sissoko never doubled the money as promised? He had received millions of dollars without any apparent reason. This became a mystery, with no clear explanation for this behavior, only speculation. Some believe that Sissoko might actually be a sorcerer, not just a scammer. He used magic to cloud the judgment of the bank manager, and he continued to transfer money. Another theory is that the bank manager might genuinely believe that Sissoko is a sorcerer, and he feared for himself and his family if he didn't follow instructions, fearing repercussions. A possibility is that Sissoko may have had some sort of blackmail or threat against the bank manager. When Momet first transferred a large sum of money to Sissoko, it could have been in the millions. Sissoko may have refused to return the money and instead threatened to disclose this information to others if Momet did not continue to transfer money. The second question that needs to be raised is why such a large sum of money could be withdrawn from the bank over 3 years without anyone noticing or questioning it. Even when the highest-ranking officials in the bank, surely there must be regular audits and stringent procedures in place. A huge amount like $242 million disappearing over 3 years without anyone noticing is remarkable. Perhaps the bank's internal controls and systems at that time were somewhat different, or not as robust as they are today. Returning to the story of Babandit Sissoko, he utilized that money for a purpose. As mentioned earlier, the scheme began in 1995 when he deceived the Islamic bank manager and acquired millions of dollars. Sissoko decided to leave the bank and return to his homeland, Mali. During this time, the bank manager continued to transfer millions of dollars to Sissoko's account. He lived for several months in his homeland in Mali, one of the poorest regions in the country. Sissoko distributed money to the locals and initiated various projects. His significant investment transformed the local economy, and people began to view him as a genuine benefactor. From there, he became a beloved and respected figure in the community. After spending some months in Mali, Sissoko decided to move to the United States, particularly New York. At this point, the money transfers continued in the early months of 1996. Sissoko then arrived in New York and approached the Citibank, one of the largest banks in the U.S. at that time. He went to the main branch in New York and managed to persuade one of the employees there to cooperate with him, perhaps through the use of his charm or monetary incentives. Despite knowing that Sissoko had multiple accounts in Dubai, and other areas in the U.S., the employee agreed. Through his interactions with the Citibank employee, primarily aimed at facilitating his bank transactions, Sissoko had plans to transfer the entire sum of money from Dubai to the U.S. Indeed, Sissoko successfully transferred a substantial sum from his account in Dubai to his account in the U.S. With the help of a Citibank employee who could assist him in these transactions, he generously rewarded her. At this point, Sissoko felt secure as the money had arrived at his U.S. account, and he began living a lavish lifestyle in the U.S. Sissoko started spending extravagantly, buying whatever he wanted. He even purchased 2 Boeing 727 aircraft, each costing around $180,000. He intended to use these aircraft to start a new airline, named Dabia Airlines, after his hometown in Mali. Sissoko bought 1 small plane and 2 Boeing 727s, each refurbished for about $180,000. He planned to launch his airline from scratch, using the planes he had purchased and his entrepreneurial spirit, as the cost of planes had decreased significantly. However, these ambitious plans did not quite materialize. These aircraft, primarily stationed at airports and unused, never truly took off. This was typical of Sissoko. He would enthusiastically dive into a new venture with the hope of turning millions of dollars into a new idea, only to become disheartened when it failed. In his grand ideas and extravagant spending, Sissoko did not forget the people in his hometown. He continued to support the residents of Langue de Bia. His fame skyrocketed, spreading throughout the region and beyond. Whenever he landed his planes, the locals would gather to welcome Sissoko with flowers and cheers, and he reciprocated their affection. At this point, Sissoko seemed like a figure larger than life in every aspect, including his level of fame and adoration from the public. However, things took a turn for the worse in July 1961. Understandably, Sissoko attempted to purchase 2 decommissioned U.S. military helicopters. These were helicopters left inactive since the Vietnam War era. Sissoko submitted a purchase request to the U.S. government, claiming he wanted to convert these helicopters into a humanitarian aid aircraft to deliver medical supplies to hospitals. He planned to use them for his philanthropic efforts in his hometown, where he had built hospitals and clinics as part of his community support initiatives. However, the U.S. government only reluctantly approved, as they suspected Sissoko might use the helicopters for other purposes such as smuggling or involvement in military conflicts in Mali, a country with a history of civil unrest. Matters escalated when Sissoko's associates attempted to bribe a U.S. official with $30,000. While Sissoko himself did not directly engage in this bribery attempt, it was orchestrated by his supporters. Unfortunately for Sissoko's team, the official they were trying to bribe turned out to be incorruptible and reported the bribery attempt to the authorities, leading to the arrest of Sissoko's associates. The investigations did not uncover their connection to Sissoko, making him a mysterious figure in the bribery case. However, at that time, Sissoko was not in the U.S., leading to an international manhunt for him through Interpol. Eventually, Sissoko was arrested in Sini and Thixi and detained in one of their prisons before being extradited to the U.S. He immediately enlisted the help of a prominent American lawyer to defend himself. This lawyer's name was Thomas Spencer, a highly renowned legal figure at the time. Sissoko instructed Spencer to meet him at Tuishi prison to discuss the case and the upcoming legal proceedings. Thomas Spencer recounted his visit to Sissoko at the prison to a very special meeting with the prison director. Upon meeting Sissoko, Thomas spoke to the prison director, who even requested a transfer under Sissoko's influence, which Thomas found unsettling. Intriguingly, Thomas later questioned the prison director about the reason behind this request. The director revealed that Sissoko was arranging exquisite meals for the prison staff sent from Paris, and they were having a jolly good time together. Upon hearing this from the prison director at Tuishi, Thomas realized the unique character he was dealing with. Subsequently, Sissoko was extradited to the U.S. to face charges related to bribery. He was transferred to a prison, the Miami Federal Prison, where the bribery case occurred. Spencer's first move was to request a bail hearing, aiming to ensure Sissoko's release until trial. However, the U.S. government and the prosecution strongly opposed such bail, fearing that Sissoko might flee, jeopardizing the investigation into his other potentially illicit activities, which they suspected were numerous. Despite these concerns, Sissoko garnered significant support at his bail hearing, thanks to his wealth and influential connections with those present. Sissoko's lawyers presented a lineup of testimonials, and many diplomats and prominent figures from various embassies and different fields testified on his behalf. Even the presiding judge noted in the court record that he had never seen so many diplomats in his courtroom in previous cases. But these testimonials only served to underscore Sissoko's stature and importance, reinforcing the arguments for his bail. Furthermore, Sissoko's legal team assured that he was ready to post a very large bail amount to ensure his presence throughout the trial process. At this point, the pressure on the judge was immense, especially from the government and the prosecution, who vehemently opposed granting bail to Sissoko. Consequently, an exorbitant bail amount was set for Sissoko. The bail amount was $20 million, a staggering sum that the judge deemed as a significant hurdle, one that Sissoko would not be able to overcome. However, after consulting with his legal team and understanding the situation, the observers present at the courtroom were astounded when Sissoko swiftly agreed to post the bail amount. It was inconceivable how someone on his side could produce such a colossal sum of money. Subsequently, the bail amount was indeed paid, and Sissoko was released. One of the first things he did after his release was to lavish his legal team and his defense team with gifts. This gesture greatly surprised Spencer and the lawyers, as it was the first time they had received such extravagant gifts, especially considering that Sissoko's case was still ongoing, and his success was far from assured at that point. According to foreign sources, until the day of his trial in Miami, Sissoko had begun a spree of lavish spending. His subordinates recounted how their boss had entered a luxury store and made a purchase order worth $500,000 in one go. Employees at the Sang Se dealership also reported that Sissoko was buying 2.4 brand new cars every week, and he had even married numerous women, reportedly over 10, all within Miami. Sissoko had rented over 20 luxury homes, each reserved for a different social event, while the bank manager back in Dubai continued to transfer money to him. Sissoko seemed to be exploiting the bank's lack of spending limits. Aware of this, it seemed that all the debts in this realm had been wiped away by the bank manager, as if they had never existed. And the reason why the bank manager continued to act this way remained a mystery. Many speculated that he might have been coerced or bribed. Meanwhile, while awaiting trial in Miami, Sissoko still didn't forget to engage in philanthropic activities to maintain his public image and garner sympathy, as well as support, from the public. Sissoko remained hopeful that this would work in his favor during his trial. Therefore, Sissoko hit the streets of Miami and visited impoverished areas to offer assistance to the poor and the needy. He distributed food and fruit to them. The media highlighted these charitable actions to bolster his reputation. On one occasion, Sissoko helped a school band that was struggling financially, despite being invited to numerous high-profile events to perform at large-scale ceremonies. He donated $300,000 to the band, a much larger sum than what was required for their specific needs. Subsequently, the band organized a special musical event to express gratitude to Sissoko. During this time, he also made efforts to improve his image within Miami's business community. Sissoko believed that this would alleviate pressure in his upcoming trial. As the trial related to the bribery case involving the purchase of military helicopters by Sissoko began, his defense team initially advised him to deny all accusations, especially during the interrogations. However, to everyone's surprise, Sissoko confessed, taking full responsibility for the bribery case, leaving his defense team bewildered. Though Mas Spencer was particularly puzzled by this, and when Spencer asked why Sissoko did so, he refused to explain, leaving Spencer feeling unsettled. Many years later, it was discovered that Sissoko may have confessed to divert attention away from the U.S.'s ongoing investigations into his financial dealings, which were much more serious than the bribery case. In this trial, Sissoko was sentenced to only 43 days in jail, with a fine of $250,000, and regarding the 2 decommissioned helicopters, which was not a significant issue. Subsequently, Sissoko was sent to a federal prison in Florida. However, after serving half of his sentence, the government proposed transferring Sissoko to house arrest, in exchange for a substantial contribution to a homeless shelter. Of course, Sissoko agreed, donating $1 million to this shelter. He was then released from prison to complete the remainder of his sentence at home. Immediately after completing his sentence, Sissoko left the United States and returned to Mali. Upon arrival, he received a warm welcome at the airport as usual. In 1998, the money transfers from the bank manager back in Dubai to Sissoko continued. Therefore, Sissoko no longer needed to withhold his spending and began to find ways to spend money. He used it for failed projects like Dabi Lai or distributed it to those who followed him and those around him. Sissoko enjoyed lavishing gifts, even though his former associates noticed that during his time in Miami, Sissoko was spending about $1 million a month on gifts for those around him. It was expected that this spending would further enrich Mali, as the Ardé people were closely associated with Sissoko, and he continued to request additional money transfers from the bank manager. It was strange that this continued to happen, though the reason was unknown. However, such unusual behavior would gradually be detected. In March 1998, anomalies began to be noticed in the bank's wire transfer records. At this time, the bank manager felt even more pressure as Anta had been unreachable for a long time. Subsequently, the bank manager reluctantly confided in a close colleague. Anta struggled to explain this. Anta couldn't comprehend why he had transferred such a large sum of money to a fiery man from another country. Anta believed that the individual was a legitimate businessman, or perhaps Anta had used a side scheme to manipulate the bank manager into doing so. It was truly an unbelievable scenario. It left the bank manager feeling perplexed and unable to provide a concrete figure regarding the total amount transferred to Sissoko. Instead, Anta knew that the amount was 890 million ham, equivalent to $242 million. The colleague was stunned and taken aback when Anta revealed this, stating that it was highly suspicious. It could lead to serious repercussions and tarnish the bank's reputation. As word of the irregularities spread, the bank staff at Dubai Islamic Bank began to fear for their funds. This could potentially trigger a run on the bank, causing further chaos within the institution itself. Consequently, the Dubai government swiftly intervened upon discovering the turmoil at the bank. A prominent newspaper linked to Dubai published an article reassuring the public that the situation was under control. The Dubai government and the bank's management pledged to ensure the safety of all depositors at Dubai Islamic Bank. This was crucial to prevent a crisis and a run on the bank. The article mentioned ongoing investigations and the arrest of the bank's managing director, Muhammad, along with 2 accomplices, for embezzling amounts ranging from 200 to 500 million ham. Most of the embezzled funds were traced back to bank officials, as it was an inside job from top to bottom, until the government intervened. In response to this serious breach, a significant portion of the bank's management was to be absorbed into the government. Subsequently, information regarding the court proceedings, including those involving the bank's director and his accomplices, was restricted, but according to the article, 17 individuals were convicted and sentenced to 3 years in prison each. These defendants had various nationalities, primarily bank employees, which explained how such large sums could be embezzled. The extent to which these employees were complicit with the bank's director was not disclosed. The article mentioned that the total amount embezzled, allegedly by the bank's management, amounted to 80 to 90 million ham. As for Sissoko, he was also among the 117 individuals convicted, receiving an absentia sentence as he was overseas. All defendants were sentenced to 3 years each, and in 1999, Dubai Islamic Bank filed a lawsuit against Citibank in the United States, alleging that the bank accepted large transfers without following proper procedures. Dubai Islamic Bank sought compensation amounting to $151 million, but it appears that Citibank did not pay any settlement. At this point, lawyers representing Dubai Islamic Bank in the United States launched an investigation to trace the diverted funds. They concluded that Muhammad Aidu, the managing director of Dubai Islamic Bank, and his accomplices did not benefit from any of these embezzlements, as all were transferred to Sissoko. Although the bank director took responsibility for all these embezzlements, with Sissoko, the police forces of the T department froze upon him. This meant that Muhammad Aidu could be arrested if he set foot outside the country. Therefore, Sissoko, in turn, decided to leave, a country without an extradition treaty with other nations, and to further protect himself, Sissoko became an international fugitive. He actually ran for office in 2002 and won in his famous political career. This victory made him a member of parliament with immunity from extradition. He believed this would protect him even when traveling abroad. However, over the years, Sissoko's fortune dwindled, excessive spending, and his fame waned as well. As a result, he lost the election in 2014, subsequently losing his parliamentary seat and immunity from extradition. Consequently, Sissoko returned to his humble hometown, Diabia, where he lived out the rest of his days. In 2018, a BBC journalist managed to locate Sissoko in Diabia and persuaded him to participate in an interview, which was the only interview Sissoko ever gave after being hunted by the T. However, Sissoko's interview didn't provide much new information about the modus operandi and the truth about his schemes. He didn't answer, dodging questions and keeping the chaos at bay. Throughout the interview, Sissoko remained reticent and did not provide straightforward details about the entire case. The most significant revelation in the interview was when Sissoko admitted that there was a time when he had amassed a fortune of up to $400 million, yet Sissoko embezzled $242 million from the bank. The remaining multimillion-dollar sums came from his schemes. There were two possibilities: either Sissoko was lying about his wealth, or he was involved in other unknown fraudulent schemes. But most leaned towards the second possibility, suspecting that the Dubai Islamic Bank scam wasn't Sissoko's only fraudulent activity. When asked about the current whereabouts of the money, Sissoko calmly replied, "I've spent it all." When pressed further, employees questioned him about the Dubai Islamic Bank case. Sissoko evaded the topic and denied almost everything. He asserted that he only had one meeting with the bank's leadership. This meeting was related to a smooth flight, unrelated to the $242 million and the three thoughts. He laughed mockingly, denying everything, and said, "If I were a criminal, I wouldn't need to rob a bank." He then suggested that the bank should explain why such a large sum had disappeared from their vaults. The interviewer did not press further and also did not inquire about the transfers recorded at Citibank in the United States, nor did he ask about the bank employees Sissoko had implicated. During the interview, Sissoko revealed his character. He said, "I never feel satisfied. Today I spend 10 million, tomorrow I want 20 million, the next day 40 million. Money can't satisfy me." Sissoko then continued to live freely without remorse for any of his deeds. Sissoko lived in his humble hometown of Diabia until he passed away in 2021, bringing an end to our tale today. I must reiterate that this is indeed a true story. What are your thoughts on Sissoko's criminal exploits and his cunning? Leave your comments below. Until next time, this is Black and White Code. Goodbye and see you again.